have to get it stabilized before it all goes in the water.
We are doing everything we can, ma'am.
This is a disaster.
The second cement truck rolled in before noon. This one didn't even slow down. From the porch of his farmhouse, Ethan Caldwell watched 30 tons of concrete and steel grind across the narrow stone bridge his great-grandfather had built by hand in 1921. The bridge groaned, low, deep, almost alive, like it was warning him. Dust shook loose from the mortar and drifted into the creek below. Ethan set his coffee down. His hands were steady, but his jaw tightened. That bridge wasn't decorative. It wasn't some rustic Instagram prop. It was a registered historic structure, privately owned, way-traded for farm equipment, not industrial monsters hauling wet concrete. And yet here they were again. He walked down the gravel path, boots crunching, phone already recording. "Hey," Ethan shouted, raising an arm as the truck lurched to a stop halfway across. "This is private property. You're over the posted weight limit." The driver didn't even look embarrassed. He leaned out the window, chewing gum. "Talk to the HOA," he said. "We're cleared." "Cleared?" Ethan almost laughed. At the far end of the bridge, Linda Hawthorne stood with her arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes, white SUV parked like a judge's bench. President of Maple Ridge Estates HOA, former realtor, permanent smile that never reached her mouth. She clapped once, slow, mocking. "Ethan," she called, voice sweet as syrup. "You're holding up construction. The community clubhouse schedule is already tight." "This bridge can't handle that load," Ethan replied, loud enough for the driver and his camera. "You were notified in writing." Linda tilted her head. "It's just an old bridge. Progress requires flexibility." Flexibility? The word hit harder than it should have. Ethan's family had survived floods, recessions, and 3 generations of developers circling their land like vultures. That bridge had outlived them all. And now, because it saved 10 minutes on a truck route, Linda Hawthorne had decided it was disposable. The driver revved the engine. The bridge shuddered. Ethan stepped back, heart pounding, not from fear but from calculation. He watched the load shift, watched a hairline crack crawl along a stone his great-grandfather had carved himself. He zoomed in, perfect focus, time-stamped. Linda caught his eye and smiled whiter. "See," she said, "still standing." The truck finished crossing and rolled toward the half-built clubhouse on the far hill. Another one was already lining up behind it. Ethan didn't argue, he didn't threaten. He simply turned and walked back toward the house. Inside his workshop, the air smelled like cedar and oil. Old blueprints lay rolled in a corner, papers most people would have thrown away decades ago. Ethan unrolled one carefully, smoothing it flat with reverence. Bridge schematics, load tolerances, easement clauses. He reached for a notebook and wrote a single line across the top of a fresh page. Document everything. By sunset, 3 more trucks crossed. By nightfall, the creek carried flecks of mortar downstream. And as Ethan reviewed the footage, weights, plates, timestamps, he realized something Linda Hawthorne didn't. That bridge wasn't just access. It was leverage. And if she kept pushing trucks across it, she wasn't just damaging history. She was walking straight into a trap she wouldn't see until it was far too late. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Every time another truck crossed the bridge, the vibration traveled up through the ground, through the foundation of his house and straight into his chest. The sound wasn't loud anymore, it was worse. Low, predictable, mechanical, like a countdown. At 2:14 a.m., headlights swept across his bedroom ceiling. Another one. Ethan checked the live feed on his tablet. Infrared footage lit the bridge in ghostly white. The weight sensor he'd discreetly installed weeks earlier flashed red. 34.6 tons. He exhaled slowly and tapped record. By morning, Ethan's workshop looked less like a place of craftsmanship and more like a command center. Screens showed timestamps, axle loads, plate numbers. A legal pad sat open, filled with neat, engineer-straight handwriting. At 8:03 a.m., his phone rang. "Mr. Caldwell?" a tired male voice asked. "This is Tom Ray's County Code Enforcement. We've received a complaint about a potentially unsafe structure on your property." Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. Here it was. "I'm happy to cooperate," he said calmly. When would you like to inspect? Reyes hesitated. We're already nearby. Of course they were. 2 county trucks pulled in 20 minutes later, followed closely by Linda Hawthorne's white SUV. She stepped out smiling, holding a leather folder like a trophy. Safety first, she said brightly. We're all concerned. Reyes walked the bridge, frowning at the fresh cracks, unaware, or pretending to be, that none of them had existed before the trucks. He scribbled notes, took photos. This structure shows signs of stress, he said finally. We'll need a certified structural report. I already have one scheduled, Ethan replied. Linda blinked just once. That afternoon, Dr. Melissa Grant, a structural preservation engineer with 20 years of court experience, inspected the bridge inch by inch. She said very little while working. That worried Linda more than shouting ever could. By dusk, Melissa handed Ethan a thick report. Mr. Caldwell, she said quietly, this bridge was engineered beautifully for its time, but the loading it's experiencing now will cause catastrophic failure within weeks, possibly days. Linda laughed too quickly. That's dramatic. Melissa didn't look at her. The damage pattern matches repeated overload beyond 200% capacity. Silence. That night, Ethan went somewhere he hadn't been in years, the county record's office. He dug through yellowed deeds, easements, hand-drawn plats. Dust coated his sleeves. Hours passed. Then he found it. A clause buried in a 1921 filing, typed crooked on a fatting page. Exclusive access bridge. Any commercial or municipal use without written consent constitutes trespass and liability for all resulting damages. Ethan sat back, heart pounding. The bridge wasn't just private. It was legally untouchable. And Maple Ridge Estates. It had no other access route. When Ethan walked out into the cold night air, he didn't feel angry anymore. He felt ready. Because Linda Hawthorne hadn't just overstepped. She built her entire project on ground that didn't belong to her, and was about to learn how expensive that mistake would be. By the end of the week, the neighborhood had split down the middle. On one side were the HOA loyalists, retirees who believed every glossy flyer Linda Hawthorne mailed, every promise about enhanced property values and community growth. On the other were the quiet ones, the people who waved at Ethan but never spoke when Linda was nearby. Fear did that. Ethan felt it when Margaret Lewis, the elderly woman who lived 2 houses down, knocked on his door with a loaf of banana bread and shaking hands. I remember when your great-grandfather laid those stones, she whispered, eyes darting toward the road. That bridge never hurt anyone. This isn't right. She left before he could thank her. That same afternoon, a new HOA notice appeared on every mailbox. Emergency community meeting, mandatory attendance. The clubhouse buzzed with tension. Folding chairs scraped. People whispered. Linda stood at the front, projector glowing behind her with a sleek presentation titled Infrastructure Challenges and Community Solutions. She smiled like a surgeon. Our community, she began, is facing obstruction by a single property owner refusing reasonable cooperation. All eyes turned to Ethan. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of the bridge zoomed tight on cracks. This structure is unsafe, Linda continued, and its owner has refused to allow improvements that would benefit everyone. Ethan stood slowly. You mean the damage caused by your contractor's overweight trucks? He asked. Murmurs rippled. Linda didn't miss a beat. There's no proof of that. Ethan raised his phone. The screen lit up with time-stamped footage, axle loads flashing red. There it was. Silence slammed into the room. Before Linda could speak, Jason Miller, a young father near the back, cleared his throat. If the bridge fails, how do emergency vehicles get in? Linda hesitated, just long enough. We'll manage, she said quickly. That hesitation mattered. After the meeting, Linda cornered Ethan in the parking lot. You're playing a dangerous game, she hissed, her smile gone. People lose things when they fight progress. Ethan looked past her at the clubhouse, at the half-finished structure that depended entirely on his bridge. I'm not fighting progress, he said. I'm documenting trespass. The retaliation started that night. Floodlights from the construction site stayed on until dawn. Engines idled. Trucks blocked Ethan's driveway by mistake. A client canceled a custom order after receiving an anonymous call warning of legal trouble. And then came the letter. Notice of legal action. Maple Ridge Estates HOA versus Ethan Caldwell. Interference with community development. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. The HOA was suing him. He drove straight to Rachel Donovan, a property attorney known for dismantling bad cases with surgical precision. She skimmed the letter and laughed, once. "This is nonsense," she said, "but it's expensive nonsense." "How expensive?" Rachel met his eyes. "Unless we flip it." That night, Ethan added a second line to his notebook. "Make them prove everything." Because Linda Hawthorne wasn't just escalating. She was bleeding money, rushing timelines, and making mistakes. And the deeper she pushed, the more evidence she left behind. The lawsuit changed everything. Not because it scared Ethan, but because it exposed just how desperate Linda Hawthorne had become. Within 48 hours of filing, construction activity doubled. Cement trucks ran before sunrise and after dark, as if speed alone could outrun the law. Ethan watched from his monitors as the bridge absorbed blow after blow, each crossing logged automatically. Weight, time, license plate. 38.9 tons. 41.2 tons. 36.7 tons. Every entry felt less like damage and more like a receipt. Rachel Donovan moved fast. She filed an immediate response demanding discovery, contracts, permits, load manifests, insurance policies. The HOA's legal team stalled, delayed, dodged. That told Ethan everything. "People who are clean don't hide paperwork," Rachel said over speakerphone. 2 days later, the county inspector returned, this time alone. Tom Reyes looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight as another truck crossed behind him, the bridge groaning like an old man forced to carry someone else's burden. "These trucks," Ethan said calmly, handing over a folder, "average more than double the rated capacity." Reyes flipped through the pages, photos, data, engineer reports. "This is thorough," he admitted. That afternoon, a temporary weight restriction notice went up on the bridge. Linda lost her mind. She stormed onto Ethan's property, heels sinking into gravel, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You did this," she snapped. "You're strangling the community." Ethan didn't raise his voice. "Your trucks did this." "You don't understand what's at stake," Linda shouted. "Investors are waiting, deadlines matter." That was the moment. Investors. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his mind locked onto the word like a missile finding heat. That night, Rachel dug deeper. Maple Ridge Estates Phase 2, 40 new homes pre-sold to outside investors. Marketing materials promised existing infrastructure access and approved commercial routes. Rachel leaned back in her chair slowly. "Ethan," she said, "they sold something they don't own." By the end of the week, the real bomb dropped. Rachel obtained records for the construction company, Hawthorne Development Group, owned by Linda's brother-in-law. The load reports they submitted claimed trucks never exceeded 15 tons. Ethan stared at the numbers. His data showed nearly triple that. "That's federal transportation fraud," Rachel said quietly. "And if Linda knew?" "She knew," Ethan replied. The final straw came Saturday morning. A fully loaded cement truck hit the bridge at speed. Ethan watched live as a support stone shifted, just a fraction of an inch, barely visible. But enough to reroute utilities embedded beneath the structure. Enough to trigger automatic alerts. By noon, 47 homes lost internet and water pressure. Panic spread through Maple Ridge. Emergency crews arrived, county officials followed. And standing at the edge of the bridge, pale and shaking, Linda Hawthorne finally realized what she'd done. She hadn't just pushed too hard. She'd pushed until the ground beneath her started to collapse. The sirens didn't stop. County trucks, utility vans, and emergency responders clogged the narrow road leading to Ethan's property. Workers shouted over one another while residents gathered in confused clusters, phones raised, whispering rumors that grew darker by the minute. No water, no internet, intermittent power. Linda Hawthorne stood near her SUV, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "This is unacceptable," she snapped at a county official. "This bridge failure is his responsibility." The official didn't answer. He was staring at the exposed foundation beneath the bridge, at the utility conduits cracked and bent like broken bones. Ethan arrived with a waterproof case under his arm. "Mr. Caldwell," the official said, relief in his voice, "we need documentation." Ethan opened the case. Inside were months of evidence: weight logs, video footage, engineering reports, certified letters ignored. The official's expression changed with every page. By mid-afternoon, the county commissioner showed up. So did someone else. Two men in dark jackets stepped out of an unmarked sedan. One flashed a badge. "Federal DOT," he said. "We're here regarding falsified load reports." Linda's phone slipped from her hand and hit the pavement. The agents interviewed drivers on the spot. One cracked in minutes. "They told us to log 15 tons, he admitted, even when we were hauling 40. That was enough. By evening, the construction site was shut down. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind like surrender flags. News vans lined the road. Cameras rolled. Linda tried to speak to Ethan as he walked past. "Let be reasonable," she said, voice trembling. "We can work something out." Ethan stopped, but didn't turn around. "You sued me," he said. "You threatened my home. You destroyed a historic structure." She swallowed hard. "What do you want?" He finally faced her. "I want you to stop." She nodded too fast. "Done, I'll tell them." Ethan shook his head. "It's not your choice anymore." That night, the story hit local news. HOA President under investigation after bridge damage cuts utilities to dozens. By morning, it went statewide. Rachel called before sunrise. Environmental protection is involved now. Fuel runoff, concrete wash, creek contamination. Ethan looked out at the water, where rainbow sheens floated near the banks. "How bad?" he asked. Rachel exhaled. "Criminal bad." The emergency HOA meeting was chaos. Residents shouted. Board members resigned on the spot. Linda sat frozen, staring straight ahead as a projector displayed a single number. Estimated liability, $1.9 million. Someone in the back laughed, hysterically. 3 days later, Linda's investors pulled out. 5 days later, her accounts were frozen pending investigation. 7 days later, she resigned as HOA president. Ethan stood alone on the bridge at dusk, watching the creek flow beneath stones that had held for a century, until greed pushed them too far. But the story wasn't over. Because the lawsuit Linda filed, Rachel had turned it around. And next week, Ethan would step into a courtroom, not as a defendant, but as the man holding all the cards. The courtroom smelled like old wood and quiet authority. Ethan sat at the defense table, hands folded, posture calm. Across the aisle, Linda Hawthorne looked smaller than he remembered, shoulders tense, eyes darting, two attorneys whispering urgently at her side. Judge Marcus Ellison entered without ceremony. "Let's proceed." Linda's lead attorney opened with confidence that didn't last. He argued community necessity, implied shared access, painted Ethan as an obstructionist clinging to the past. Then Rachel Donovan stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Rachel began with a single image on the screen behind her. Ethan's bridge, intact, dated footage from 6 months earlier. Then she clicked. Another image. A crack. Another. A shift. Then video, cement trucks crossing, timestamps blinking, weights flashing red. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Rachel walked the judge through it slowly. Every violation, every ignored notice, every falsified report. She introduced DOT testimony, environmental findings, and finally the 1921 deed clause. Judge Ellison leaned forward. "Exclusive access," he read aloud. "Commercial use without consent constitutes trespass and liability." Linda's attorney stood. "Your Honor." "Sit down," the judge said flatly. Rachel finished with the lawsuit. "This case," she said, "is not interference with development. It is attempted theft through intimidation." Silence crushed the room. Judge Ellison removed his glasses. The court finds the plaintiff's claims without merit. He turned to Ethan. Mr. Caldwell, do you wish to proceed with your counterclaims? Rachel nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. The judge exhaled, granted. The gavel came down. Linda's case collapsed in under 20 minutes. But the real damage came outside the courtroom. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, one question echoed louder than the rest. Ms. Hawthorne, did you knowingly approve falsified federal transportation records? Linda didn't answer. She couldn't. By the end of the week, arrests followed. Her brother-in-law was charged with federal transportation fraud. Environmental violations piled on. Bank subpoenas followed the investor trail. Linda's name appeared everywhere. Not as an HOA president. As a defendant. Ethan received the official notice 2 days later. Settlement approved, $2.3 million. The HOA would pay. Insurance wouldn't cover willful misconduct. Linda's personal assets were listed as collateral. Her house, her accounts, her reputation. Ethan returned to the bridge at sunset, touching the stone gently. It would be rebuilt, better, stronger, protected. Linda would lose everything trying to break it. And as the sun dipped low, Ethan understood something with absolute clarity. She thought the bridge was the problem. But it had only been the proof. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. First, the notices. Foreclosure postings taped quietly to doors. HOA board resignations submitted for personal reasons. Contractors pulling out midweek, leaving half-built structures and rusting equipment behind chain-link fences. Maple Ridge Estates stopped feeling like a community and started feeling like evidence. Linda Hawthorne vanished from public view, but the consequences followed her anyway. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Her name appeared in court dockets next to phrases like willful negligence and conspiracy to defraud. The same neighbors who once applauded her speeches now avoided eye contact. Ethan watched it all from a distance. He wasn't celebrating, he was rebuilding. Stone by stone, the bridge came apart under the supervision of historical preservation experts. Each salvaged block was cleaned, cataloged, and set aside. Local craftsmen, some descendants of families who'd helped build it a century earlier, volunteered their time. The work became something else entirely. Healing. One afternoon, Jason Miller stopped by with his kids. I should have spoken up sooner, Jason said quietly. We all should have. Ethan nodded. You did when it mattered. The creek ran clear again. Environmental crews removed contaminated soil. Native plants returned. Birds came back first. The lawsuit settlement funded more than repairs. It paid for a preservation easement that legally protected Ethan's land from future development pressure. Forever. Then came the letter. Linda Hawthorne, through counsel, requested a private meeting. Rachel advised against it. Ethan went anyway. They met in a neutral office downtown. Linda looked older, smaller. Her confidence had evaporated, replaced by something raw. I didn't think you'd fight back, she admitted. Everyone else folded. Ethan studied her for a moment. That's why you kept doing it. She nodded once, yes. There was no apology. There didn't need to be. Weeks later, a quiet HOA election changed everything. New leadership took over. The first vote passed unanimously. Permanent protection for historic and private access structures. Property values stabilized, trust returned slowly. Then the story went national. Articles, interviews, legal blogs dissecting the case. Ethan's bridge became a symbol of resistance, of preparation, of refusing to be pushed off land that carried memory. One night, Ethan stood on the temporary footbridge beside the reconstruction site, listening to the creek. The stones waited patiently nearby. He realized something then. Linda Hawthorne hadn't lost because of bad luck. She'd lost because she believed power meant pressure. And she'd never met someone who understood leverage. The new bridge opened on a quiet morning. No ribbon, no speeches, just sunlight catching fresh stone and water moving freely beneath it like it always had. The design honored the original arched fieldstone handset mortar, but hidden inside were modern reinforcements, weight sensors, and legal protections etched into county records. Built to last another 100 years. Ethan stood at the center, coffee in hand, the same way his great-grandfather once had. He ran his fingers across a stone salvaged from the original bridge, its surface smoothed by time and use. Nothing rushed across it now. The community had changed. Maple Ridge Estates never finished Phase 2. The land was sold off in pieces not to developers but to families who wanted space, quiet, and history. The HOA, once feared, became deliberately boring. Meetings were short, rules were clear, power was checked. Linda Hawthorne's fate unfolded without drama. Her house sold at auction. Her name disappeared from real estate listings. Federal charges concluded quietly, no prison but heavy fines and a permanent professional ban. She moved out of state. No one followed. Ethan's life settled into something better than revenge. The workshop filled with orders after the story spread. People wanted tables, chairs, and cabinets built by the man who didn't bend. Each piece carried a small brass plaque. Crafted to endure. Local schools brought students to the bridge on field trips. History teachers told them how preparation beats intimidation, how knowing the rules protects more than muscle ever could. One afternoon, Margaret Lewis crossed the bridge with a smile and a loaf of banana bread. "Your great-grandfather would be proud," she said. Ethan believed her. That evening, he wrote one final entry in his notebook, the same one where it all began. Preserve what matters, document what threatens it, never mistake patience for weakness. As the sun set, the creek reflected gold and shadow, past and future meeting under stone that refused to break. And if there was a lesson in all of it, it was this. Some people see obstacles. Others see foundations. Ethan had learned the difference. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that crossed the line, drop your story in the comments. Like this video if you believe history is worth protecting. Subscribe for more real stories where preparation beats power, and watch what happens when bullies pick the wrong neighbor.